You ever walk up to your childhood home and feel like a trespasser? It was early evening, sky dipped in that copper-orange glow you only get at the end of summer. I rolled my suitcase up the driveway like I had 100 times before. After school, after part-time jobs, even after heartbreaks. But this time, the air felt off, the blinds were drawn, the welcome mat was gone. And when I pulled out my old house key, it didn't fit. I tried again, slowly, then faster. I jiggled it like I always did. Nothing. That's when I saw it. A bright orange sticker, taped across the window next to the door. Foreclosure notice. Property seized by lender. At first, I laughed. Out loud. Because it didn't make sense. This was supposed to be home. My parents were supposed to be inside. My room was supposed to be upstairs. Messy, familiar, safe. But the porch was bare. No shoes, no wind chimes, no sign of life. Only two large black trash bags, tied up, sitting neatly, like garbage waiting for pickup. One of them had my college hoodie sticking out, the one from freshman orientation. The other had my baby blanket. That's when my hands started shaking. I called my dad. No answer. Tried my mom. Straight to voicemail. The group chat. Silent. And for a few seconds, I just stood there, heart pounding, watching the streetlight flicker above me like the universe couldn't even look me in the eye. I didn't know it yet, but that was the last time I'd ever stand on that porch. Not because I walked away, but because they erased me before I ever had the chance to knock. From the outside, we looked solid. That's what people used to say. Your parents have it all together. Nice lawn, 2 paid-off cars, Christmas lights that actually worked. We weren't flashy, just respectable, predictable. Dad wore polos on Sundays, mowed the lawn in perfect stripes. Mom baked banana bread for the neighbors, and every birthday, she'd say the same thing with a proud smile. We don't believe in debt. We raise our daughter to stand on her own 2 feet. I used to believe that made us stronger, better, wiser than the families fighting over credit card bills or chasing get-rich-quick scams. There was this one moment, burned into my memory like it came with a sound cue. I was 12, just blew out the candles on a sheet cake from Costco. As I licked frosting off my fingers, Dad pulled me aside and said, "You're our investment. We put in the work now, so you never have to struggle." And I remember thinking, wow, how lucky am I to be born into structure, into preparation. But hindsight is a cruel teacher, because when I stood on that porch 10 years later with a foreclosure notice where my name used to live, and 2 garbage bags holding my childhood like leftovers, I realized that structure was an act. It wasn't just the house that had been emptied, it was the truth. And every polished surface from my past had been hiding rot just beneath the paint. The weirdest part wasn't the locked door, or even the foreclosure sticker. It was how clean everything looked. Too clean. Like someone wanted to erase any sign we'd ever lived there. No dents in the mailbox. No chipped ceramic frog that used to sit by the porch steps. Even the garden beds, where Mom used to plant tomatoes every spring, flattened, scraped, like they'd been covered over in a hurry. I stood there staring at the front window, waiting for some flicker of movement, a curtain swaying, a shadow. Anything. Nothing. It wasn't until Mrs. Hawthorne, our next-door neighbor, peeked her head out that I got any kind of answer. She hesitated, said she thought we'd already moved months ago. That one day, a moving truck showed up, and by nightfall, the house was empty. She said she saw my mom loading boxes, my dad giving directions. No shouting, no drama, just quiet coordination. I asked if they said anything, left a note, a message, something. She shook her head, said it looked like they knew exactly what they were doing. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't a crisis. It was a plan, executed without warning, without me. The garbage bags on the porch weren't an oversight. They were a message, one that said, "You don't live here anymore." And suddenly, all the nights I stayed up studying to make them proud, all the internships I took instead of summers off, all the sacrifices I made thinking I was part of something stable, meant nothing, because I wasn't just left behind. I was cut out, deliberately, quietly, like a bad investment. I thought it was a mistake, a glitch, a typo, some data entry error that would vanish after one call to the bank. So I sat on the curb outside that empty house, laptop balanced on my knees, hotspotting off my phone, and logged into my account. That's when I saw them. 5 accounts, 3 credit cards, 2 personal loans, all active, all open under my name. At first, I stared at the screen like it was in another language. One balance said $11,400. Another, $7,800. And interest stacking like it was building its own staircase to hell. I blinked, refreshed the page, still there. Somehow, I was in nearly $25,000 of debt, except I'd never applied for a single loan, never spent that kind of money, never even had a credit card limit over $500. I called customer service, gave my information, waited on hold while piano music played like a cruel lullaby. Then the rep came back, cheerful and polite. "Yes, ma'am. Everything checks out. You've been a customer since 2019, the year I turned 18, the year my dad sat me down and said, 'Let's open a joint account. I'll show you how credit works.'" I remember signing one paper, just one. I didn't even read it. He said it was for emergencies. Turns out, I was the emergency. And all those zeros now chained to my name, they weren't numbers anymore. They were choices, made without me, against me. I didn't know how. I didn't know why. But I knew this was just the beginning. I wish I could say the debt was the worst part, but it wasn't. The worst part was realizing they didn't just take my money, they took me. I requested a full credit report the next day, sat in the back of a noisy cafe with my laptop open, pretending the world wasn't crumbling under my fingertips. When the file downloaded, it hit like a punch to the chest. 6 open accounts, 3 store cards I'd never used, a personal line of credit in my name, taken out the summer after high school. But the thing that froze me was the timestamp. The very first account opened was 2 weeks after graduation. I remembered that summer. Dad had said, "Let's get ahead of this. I'll build you a strong credit score." Said I didn't have to worry about the details. "Just sign this, sweetie. It's how grown-ups do it." I didn't know what a W-9 was, didn't know my own social security number by heart. But he did. He knew exactly how to use it. Not once, not twice, systematically, like laying bricks in a road only he could walk down, until it led straight into my future, and caved it in. That number, 9 digits long, was supposed to protect me, track my life, anchor me to something permanent. Instead, it became a weapon. And the person who held it was the one who taught me how to tie my shoes, how to cross the street, how to spell my name. Turns out, he was also the first one to erase it. It showed up on page 3 of the credit report. A luxury auto loan. Black BMW 5 Series. Leased. Registered. In my name. At first, I thought it was an error. Some digital mix-up. But the VIN matched. The paperwork was clean. It even had my digital signature. Except, I'd never signed anything. Never even sat in a BMW, let alone driven one. The loan was opened 18 months earlier. Monthly payments, $611. Then, 6 months ago, default, repossession. And now, that beautiful, leather-seated ghost was still haunting my credit like it belonged to me. I called the lender, held my breath through 5 layers of phone menus. Finally got a rep who read off the application info. Same name, same address, same social security number. Except the phone number on file wasn't mine, but I recognized it. I had seen it written 1,000 times. On school emergency forms, doctor's appointments, job applications. It was the house number I grew up with, the number they always used. And that's when it stopped feeling like a scam and started feeling like a setup. This wasn't just identity theft. It wasn't random. It wasn't careless. It was personal, intentional, strategic. They had mapped it all out like a long con, using my name to live above their means while teaching me to live beneath mine. And while I was pulling all-nighters in the library, eating ramen to save money, juggling internships and class schedules, they were cruising in a car I couldn't afford to dream about. On credit I didn't even know I had. Signed with a trust I hadn't realized was never mutual. I stopped calling after day 3. No callbacks, no texts, just silence. The kind that doesn't feel accidental, the kind that feels practiced. The group chat with my parents, empty. No new updates, no read receipts. I left one final message. Where are you? No reply. It was Mrs. Hawthorne who finally cracked. The same neighbor who said she saw them packing that night. She knocked on my car window one morning with a cup of instant coffee and a guilty expression. I probably shouldn't say anything, she whispered, but they told me not to tell you. Said it was complicated. I asked her what she meant. She said they'd mentioned Texas, said they were starting fresh. Something about a business venture, a restaurant maybe, or a food truck. They didn't leave a forwarding address. Didn't ask her to check the mail. Didn't even say goodbye. And that's when it hit me. They weren't coming back. This wasn't temporary. Wasn't a phase. It was abandonment, disguised as reinvention. They took what they could, dumped the rest in garbage bags, and vanished across state lines with my name in their pocket. And the worst part? There was no confrontation, no tearful explanation, no dramatic fight or slam doors. Just silence. Like I was a chapter they'd quietly edited out of their story. I wasn't the daughter left behind. I was the liability removed from the equation. They didn't run from trouble. They ran from me. Because in their new beginning, I was the one thing they couldn't afford to bring. It came in a plain white envelope. No warning. No knock on the door. Just a letter, wedged between a takeout menu and a coupon flyer in the mailbox of the cheap sublet I was crashing in. The return address? Department of the Treasury, Internal Revenue Service. At first, I thought it was spam, one of those fake notices meant to scare you into calling a scam number. But this wasn't a scam. It was real, stamped, dated, official. Inside, 3 pages of sterile language and a sentence that split my lungs in half. Your account is under investigation for potential misrepresentation of income and unpaid tax obligations related to reported assets. Reported assets? I didn't have assets. I had 2 tote bags, a cracked laptop, and a mattress on the floor. I had ramen dinners and a half-finished law degree hanging by a thread. I didn't own a business. I didn't flip property. I didn't report income I never earned. But someone did, and they used my name to do it. There were tax filings, receipts, a fake LLC registered in my name, the BMW listed as a business expense. So was a second credit card, opened through a rewards program for entrepreneurs. Every line on that letter felt like a punch, but it wasn't the debt that broke me. It was the language. If we do not hear from you within 30 days, further legal action may be pursued. Legal action against me, not the people who stole my name, not the ones who vanished. Me. Because in this country, if the system has your number, it doesn't care who used it. And suddenly, I wasn't just broke. I was criminal. On paper, in government files, in databases I'd never seen, but couldn't escape. They disappeared. But I was the one being hunted. I didn't even get a phone call, just an email. Subject line, urgent, financial aid status update. Sent at 2:11 a.m. Like even the system felt too guilty to deliver bad news in daylight. I opened it right there in the campus library, surrounded by whispers and fluorescent lights. And as my eyes scanned the words, my stomach dropped through the floor. Due to unresolved financial discrepancies and failure to verify standing with federal aid requirements, your merit-based scholarship has been suspended pending further review. Suspended. A word that pretends to be temporary but feels permanent the second you read it. I reread it twice, then a third time, hoping maybe I'd missed something. Maybe it was a glitch, a form I forgot to fill out. But deep down, I knew. It was the fallout, the loans, the fake business, the tax mess I hadn't made, but now owned. And the part that hit hardest? I'd earned that scholarship. 4 years, full ride, all-nighters, AP classes, volunteer hours, skipped parties. I built my entire future on that one word, merit. But suddenly, I wasn't merit-worthy anymore. I was a liability, a walking audit, a red flag with a backpack. I went to the financial aid office the next morning, waited in line behind 2 kids arguing about meal plans, sat down with a woman who wouldn't look me in the eye. She said she was sorry, said there was nothing she could do until the investigation was closed. But I could see it, behind the empathy in her voice. She thought I was lying, thought I'd gotten caught. And honestly, I was too tired to correct her. Because when your name gets stained in a system that only speaks numbers, no one asks where the ink came from. They just stop printing your story. It was a studio, 1 room, no AC, the kind of place where the ceiling fan made more noise than it did wind. But it was mine, almost. I'd found it on a desperate Tuesday afternoon, after couch surfing through favors that were starting to wear thin. The rent was doable, barely. If I picked up more shifts at the cafe and skipped actual groceries for a while. The landlord was this older guy named Russ. Wore cargo shorts in winter and smelled like gasoline. Didn't ask too many questions, just wanted to run a credit check. I nodded, handed him my info, tried to smile like I had nothing to hide. He called me 2 hours later, said, "Sorry, kid. Your score's in the toilet. No can do. No can do." Like I was applying for a theme park pass, not a place to sleep. like shelter was something you earned with numbers you didn't even know someone else had destroyed. I sat in the parking lot, engine off, phone in my lap, windows rolled up, watched people come and go, holding grocery bags, carrying babies, watering porch plants. They had keys, mailboxes, places to be. I had a folding chair in my trunk, a duffel bag with all my clothes, a half-eaten granola bar, and a bank account that said pending. And for the first time, I let myself ask it out loud. What if this doesn't get better? What if this is just it, not rock bottom, but a slow sink, like the world had quietly decided I wasn't someone worth rooting for anymore? I didn't cry, didn't scream. I just sat there, alone. As the sun dipped behind buildings I didn't have permission to live in. He stayed longer than most would have. I'll give him that. He came with takeout when I was too numb to cook, picked up my laundry from his own building because I didn't have quarters for the machines. And for a while, he believed me. Believed that I didn't open those accounts, didn't buy a car I'd never driven, didn't forge documents or skip taxes or game the system. But belief is like a flame. Even the strongest ones flicker in the wind long enough, and eventually they go out. I started seeing it in his eyes. That shift from how can I help to how do I get out of this? We were sitting on a park bench the night it ended. Late, too cold for comfort. One of those nights where even the air feels like it's holding back a truth. He didn't raise his voice, didn't accuse me, just said, I don't know who I'm dating anymore. And I didn't fight it, didn't beg, because he was right. I didn't know either. I wasn't the straight-A student anymore, wasn't the scholarship girl, wasn't the future lawyer with a plan and a 5-year goal. I was a walking red flag, a glitch in the system, a name wrapped in lawsuits and liens. And love, as it turns out, has limits, not because people are cruel, but because they're human. And when your life starts looking like a sinking ship, some people don't want to drown just to prove they cared. So I watched him walk away, quiet shoes on a quiet path, no last look, no dramatic pause, just a shadow disappearing into the night. And me, still sitting, still sinking, but at least now, I knew who wasn't coming with me. The courthouse wasn't dramatic, no marble steps, no echoing halls like in the movies. Just a gray building with flickering lights and a broken vending machine in the lobby. I sat in a metal chair, hands sweating against a clipboard, waiting to sign away the mess and whatever pride I had left. Chapter 7. Personal Bankruptcy. At 22. It felt like a punchline to a joke no one warned me I was part of. The attorney looked at me like I was lost. Not in judgment, just confusion. Because I didn't look like someone who belonged there. No luxury bags, no maxed-out lifestyle. Just a girl in borrowed dress pants and sneakers that had seen better years. He asked if I understood the consequences. Said it would follow me. Said it would sting for a long time. I nodded. Because here's the thing no one tells you. There's a special kind of grief that comes not from losing money, but from losing the version of yourself you thought was invincible. I thought I was smarter than this, more prepared, raised better. But when the people who give you your foundation are the same ones who tear it out from under you, you stop asking why and start asking, how do I survive it? So I signed every form, every line, and with each signature, I let go of something. The image, the reputation, the old version of me who thought doing everything right would keep me safe. It didn't. But what I got in return was silence. Not the crushing kind, but the kind that makes room. Room to rebuild, room to breathe, and maybe, just maybe, room to become something they couldn't take. It wasn't a real office. It was a basement, half finished, one bare bulb swinging above a folding table, the kind of space where dust lives longer than people do, but it had Wi-Fi, a door that locked, and just enough quiet for me to think. That was all I needed. I signed up on freelance legal platforms under a fake consulting name. Didn't lie about my qualifications, just reframed them. Former pre-law student, contract researcher, affordable. That last part, it worked. My first gig paid $50 to review a lease for a guy getting evicted from a vape shop. Second one was proofreading a non-disclosure agreement for someone's side hustle. Then came a contract for a small tech startup. Messy, half in Spanish, written by someone's cousin. They paid me in Venmo and Starbucks gift cards. I didn't care, because for the first time in months, the only name attached to the work was mine. No forged signature, no hidden clause, no family hands on the wheel. Just me, alone, fixing things that weren't mine to break because I needed something, anything, to be mine again. I worked through nights, slept on an air mattress that hissed with every turn, kept an old mug full of ramen forks and highlighters by my side like it was sacred. It wasn't glamorous, wasn't impressive, but it was mine. And in that cold, low-ceilinged room where the walls leaked during heavy rain, I learned something no classroom ever taught me. Sometimes survival isn't loud. It doesn't come with applause or rescue arcs. Sometimes it looks like scraping together enough to buy a used space heater and watching your breath fog up in front of your laptop as you try to make it to morning. It happened on a Tuesday, one of those quiet, gray afternoons where nothing dramatic is supposed to happen. I was halfway through reviewing a freelance NDA for a pet food startup when my phone lit up. No caller ID. I froze. It had been months. No contact, no messages. I'd stopped checking email accounts that still had their names on them, muted every notification just to keep the noise out of my bloodstream. But something about that unknown number made my heart stall. I stared at it, watched the screen vibrate silently on the table, each second stretching longer than it should have. My hand hovered over the screen. I could feel the weight of everything waiting behind that ring. Maybe it was them. Maybe it was an apology, or an explanation, or a lie they were ready to confess to. Or maybe it was just another disaster, dressed in someone else's voice. And for the first time, I didn't want to know, because healing doesn't always come with closure. Sometimes it's just not picking up the phone. The call rang out, the voicemail clicked in. I didn't listen to the message, didn't play detective, didn't dig through the number's origin or trace the area code. I just turned the phone face down and went back to work. Not because I didn't care anymore, but because caring doesn't mean returning to the fire. Silence used to feel like punishment, but that day, it felt like protection. I wasn't ignoring the past, I was choosing the present. And in that moment, a moment so quiet it barely existed, I finally understood something they never taught me in law school. Peace isn't something you wait for, it's something you defend. It wasn't much. The walls were thin. The stove clicked twice before the burner caught flame. The windows whined when the wind pushed too hard. But it was mine. First month's rent, paid in full. With money earned from contracts I wrote myself. Not stolen credit, not forged signatures. Just hours, and effort, and the kind of quiet resilience no one claps for. I moved in with 2 duffel bags, a folding table, and a $14 thrift store lamp. No couch, no headboard, no art on the walls. But I stood in the middle of that empty apartment and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Safe. Not because the world outside had changed, but because the space around me finally wasn't pretending. There was no illusion of perfection, no borrowed pride, no glossy surface hiding rot underneath. It was honest. I made a cup of instant coffee, sat cross-legged on the floor, and let the silence wash over me like a kind of baptism. No voices in the other room, no tension lingering in the air, no expectations pressing down on my chest. Just a tiny kitchen, a roof that didn't leak, and a woman learning how to breathe again. I used to think home was a place, an address, a structure passed down through blood and inheritance. But now I know home is something you build from scratch, out of the ashes of what they took, and the courage to protect it without asking permission. That night, I slept on a blanket over hardwood floor. No bed frame, no curtains, no lies. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't miss what was gone, because I finally understood. I didn't lose a home. I reclaimed the right to define one. There was no grand comeback, no viral thread, no standing ovation, no look who's thriving now montage set to cinematic music. Just a Thursday morning, mild sun leaking through cheap blinds, an invoice sent, a payment received. I made breakfast, eggs, slightly burnt, opened my laptop, answered emails from strangers who had no idea how far I'd crawled to be sitting upright. And honestly, that was enough. No cameras, no courtroom scene, no public reckoning for the people who lit the fire and walked away. I thought I needed justice, thought I needed the world to see what they did, to believe me, to validate the weight of it all. But now I just needed the water bill paid, my name clean, a Tuesday afternoon without dread in my chest. Sometimes healing isn't about proving you survived. It's about having a day so normal. You forget survival was ever the goal. I still carry it all, the debt, the sting, the hollow where trust used to live. But it doesn't scream anymore. It hums, like background noise I've learned to work around. And while they may never answer for what they did, they don't get to write the ending. That's mine. I used to think the opposite of pain was justice. Now I think it might just be peace. Not a moment, not a climax, but a string of ordinary days where no one is chasing you, no system is crushing you, and no one is telling your story for you. So if you are looking for a dramatic revenge arc, I'm sorry. All I have is this: a life, small, steady, quiet, and mine. Maybe your story isn't this dark, or maybe it's worse. Maybe it wasn't your parents. Maybe it was a partner, a friend, a system you believed in. But the truth is, sooner or later, life hands you something you didn't deserve, a mess you didn't make, a silence too loud to ignore. And when that moment comes, when everything you thought was solid turns to smoke, you'll have to make a choice. Not between revenge or forgiveness, not between rage or peace, but between becoming like them or becoming someone they could never break. So what would you do if the people who raised you took your future and left you holding the pieces? Would you chase them across state lines? Would you demand an apology that may never come? Would you scream into a void, hoping someone, anyone, would hear? Or would you do what I did, breathe, building begin again? Not for the world, not for the story, not for the cinematic payoff, but for you, for the version of you that deserves calm mornings and paid rent, for the person you were before the lies and the one you're becoming now. I didn't post about what happened, didn't go viral, didn't get a book deal or a headline, but I got something better: a quiet life, a clean slate, and the power to decide who I let back in. So if you've ever had to walk away from family to find yourself, if you've ever chosen truth over tradition, peace over performance, healing over noise, you're not alone. And neither am I. If this story echoed something inside you, like, comment, and subscribe. Not because the algorithm needs it, but because someone out there might need to know that surviving doesn't always look like winning. Sometimes it looks like getting up quietly and saying, "This part of the story belongs to me."